The project is about redefining Newtown's civic identity in the post-colonial era of Hong Kong. The following presentation will take you through my research and design in three parts. First part explains how Newtown development has established a living ideal in the past, yet now being challenged to be a regulated and controlled life. Second part explains the role of district administration, which comes hand in hand with the physical Newtowns to reinforce a drafted civic concept. Last part is a design project which subverts the existing physical and socio-political status of the civic realm through intervening different junctions along the spine of town centre. As a former British colony, town planning in Hong Kong has long been a strategy of colonial rule, while pre-war town planning was practiced as a sanitary measure to segregate the colonizers from the colonized. After the World Wars, the idea of satellite and new towns became a means of social reform to maintain her governance over the colony. In early 1970s, new town development was launched to decentralize population from the overcrowded urban cores. Currently, the new town takes up more than half of the population, and new town citizens count a majority in Hong Kong nowadays. Sha Tin, one of the first generation new town, is often considered to be a pioneering success. Coming from a hostile 50s and 60s of political unrest, the 70s era marked by new town development has been considered a watershed to Hong Kong's modernization. From the 80s onwards, Sha Tin has appeared as the backdrop of a new urban life in movies and soap operas. New towns have not only brought quality neighborhoods to the mass citizens who were refugees from China, it has also established a new way of living from the past, where new towns provide a self-sufficient and balanced community to pave the way for a stable and prosperous society. 50 years from now, such narrative continues as new town remains to be an important development strategy nowadays. Largely built on reclaimed land, a massive flat site allows Sha Tin to accommodate a variety of programs in support of 600,000 inhabitants. Meanwhile, it also maintains good qualities of open spaces as a high-rise version of the garden cities. Developed from scratch on a virgin site, Sha Tin marked the birth of a new urban form that is alien to the vernacular street typologies. Sha Tin's town planning follows the Western separation principle, and the town centre very much demonstrates it to its full. On plan, a traffic road network divides the land into zones of different land uses, while on section, pedestrian walkways are elevated to allow transit on foot from place to place. A 500-meter-long central spine overlaps a variety of zones and connects to different programs. Visitors of town centre shares the same journey. After getting off from the railway station or bus terminus, they enter the square atrium of the shopping mall. As they continue, they walk past the mall footbridge where a retail store sits on the two sides. Getting out of the mall, they arrive at the Civic Centre podium where the town hall, library and marriage registries are located. Towards the river is the Central Park where another footbridge continues its way to the other side. Sha Tin's seamless and all-you-can-get experience were once a desirable living scenario. It demonstrates a tidy and efficient routine, which has eventually become dominant in later new towns or urban redevelopments. Behind the seamless experience, various sets of laws are implemented to ensure public accessibility, moving from private malls to public buildings. Yet on the other hand, it is also a controlled journey that facilitates managerialism in regulating user behaviors in the spaces respectively. The ambiguous status of a pseudo-public space has worked well for years until the last decade, particularly the outbreak of anti-government movements in 2019. The dichotomies between users and managers unveil the hidden agenda of the new towns, where on the surface it creates a stable and prosperous society, yet behind it is a regulated version of happiness, very much as a Truman Show where everything is on the script and disobediences are not allowed. As an ex-colonial product, The unprecedented scope of new town development and her physical state as a space of social order and control reflects a larger socio-political intent. It is, after all, a social campaign to reinforce a new sense of civic identity that enjoys a superficial yet dwarfed citizenship. The birth of new communities requires new governance at district level, followed by new town development. Municipal and district councils are set up in the 1980s to foster civic engagement among the new inhabitants. It is often considered the beginning of territory-wide democracy in Hong Kong, which the public began to participate in district affairs by casting their votes or running in an election. The elected district representatives take responsibility of community building in physical and social sense, such as provision of urban facilities scaled from a litter bin to municipal complex, or mass social events such as Keep Hong Kong Clean campaign, which put strong emphasis on nurturing the public to be responsible citizens. Nevertheless, the district councils are criticized as stage communities. Rather than taking initiatives on local policies, the council members are instead cheerleaders of the government, who routinely appear on the stage to cut ribbons and take photos, creating an image of a harmonious neighborhood. In Sha Tin, a signature project consists of 12 scattered devices along Shengmun River was launched to introduce stories of the new town. The locations are picked according to their historical significance, yet they serve no further functions other than being information boards on the historical facts of the town. Concerns on avoiding public gathering, disturbance to other users, and worries on vandalism were always at top priorities rather than the physical interactions. These physical district works vary from scale, yet they are all criticized to be white elephants which have spent large expense yet having little or even adverse impacts to the urban space. Moreover, these council-initiated facilities are subjected to the management of government departments, that her managerialist mindset further discouraged people from appropriating these council infrastructures. In the post-colonial era, the dwarfed concept of civic identity as a responsible citizen has been severely challenged. Changing perceptions on the idea of a district and its civic realm has been reflected spatially in the events throughout the past decade. Therefore, the 70s concept of a new town citizenship and her civic realm shall be re-examined. The project brings in and challenges two key aspects of research findings into the design. First, public space managerialism, and second, the role of district works in urban space design. The project is set to be initiated and managed by the District Facilities Management Committee under the District Council. The proposal selectively intervenes 4 junctions of the town center's corridor and transforms them from mere circulation interchanges into destinations of their own. These new devices superimpose the existing circulation and act as urban pauses, bringing commuters into new public spaces, which catalyzes a variety of events. In terms of tectonic strategy, fast junction spaces are descaled by the devices that accommodate secluded spaces at a smaller and more intimate scale. They also integrate the vertically and horizontally separated spaces by small access points to the devices at different levels. As interventions, the structural and material expression of the devices reinterpret and subvert the presence of interior and exterior construction hoardings around the site. Hoardings are interpreted as popped-up structures which present a tension. On one hand, the uncertainties and potential of spaces in progress. On the other hand, a fixated future narrative that is shown on the panels by slogans or rendered images. The devices adopt the structural feature of the hoarding, meanwhile leaving an honest expression of the materials and enclosure to make rooms for visual interpretation and physical appropriation. Timber will be the main material for internal intervention and steel for the exterior ones. Let's take a walk. The first device is located on the edge of the atrium square. It is an entry point for external visitors where people first reach after leaving the railway station. Used to be a landmark of the new town, the music fountain was removed since 2000s. In 2019, the space is occupied into a focal point of protest, where after the event it continued to be appropriated by people for information exchange. Yet security measures are taken by the property management to prohibit these alternate uses. The first intervention adopts and enables these prohibited events. It takes form of an elevated box, which people flow are maintained underneath, and the main activity spaces are inside and above the box. Typically, commuters first reach the ground floor entrance, where the column space serves as a gallery for people to post and share information. The floor above is the big step, where it can be seating area which faces the atrium, or itself becoming an elevated stage of the atrium space. At the roof level is a cafe area connected to more corridors at upper level, where people can take a rest from shopping or to inhabit the space for long-hour activities. On the other end of shopping mall is another entrance atrium with less people flow, which serves more as an entry for local commuters. Similar to the square atrium, it has also become a spot of major protest, which afterwards being restricted by management. Meanwhile, the rotunda is visible yet disconnected from the exterior roof level. Therefore, the second device enhances vertical connection by introducing a spiral ramp which connects the rotunda to the ground from the roof level. The less crowded space also enables more intimate forms of public gatherings, such as debates and discussions. Since the entrance is raised a level above, the device is now visible and accessible from the mall footbridge. As one enters and goes down the ramp, they can stop by the balconies or join the discussion at the forum space. The device also activates the ground level of the rotunda to be a street where public events such as street counters can take place adjacent to the retail stores. Leaving the shopping mall, one reaches a cluster of cultural buildings brought together by a podium. On the podium is a government open space, yet activities are limited and regulated. Lack of shadings also discourage people to utilize the area. On the frontal edge of the podium, there is a building block where indoor restaurants and government offices are located that limits accessibility and disconnects the podium and the park at the front. Therefore, the third device carves the frontal building and turns it into a large void of sheltered spaces. A mezzanine floor is added which introduces a gradual transition from the podium to ground level. It retains most of the existing structure and envelope. Meanwhile, the existing glaze and part of the roof are removed to introduce daylight and cross breeze to the shaded areas. The frontal building can now be accessed via the entrance that integrates with the existing building envelope. People can also see the riverside through the horizontal openings. At the entrance, people can walk down to the additional mezzanine podium attached to the existing service core, where it can be dry markets or weekend bazaars. Beneath the mezzanine is the sheltered ground level where prohibited activities on the podium level is allowed, such as skateboarding. Reaching the end of the journey is the Central Park and Shingmun River, which runs through the center axis of the entire new town. The edge of park is clearly separated into different zones, respectively for park users, cyclists, and pedestrians. As a result, activities are isolated and reduced to linear movements. Furthermore, its relation to the waterscape is limited to a visual one. Therefore, the last device places a terraced triangular pier which extends the areas of each level and integrates different users at the same platform. Users first reaches the small entrance pavilion, where they can take the stair and ramp down the level. Reaching the floor beneath is the existing promenade, where the area is extended to become parking areas for bike. On the same floor, commuters can walk down to the pontoon, where small boats are allowed to be parked. Here marks the end of the journey and perhaps the beginning of a new civic identity.